There's the Navy and all of their many layers. There's the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, which used to be a great advocate, and now not so much. And then we have the State Department of Health. And it's come to our attention that really, given the reality of our state of our federal government, the State Department of Health is our best chance at protecting our groundwater supply. So we sued them. It was a friendly suit. We did it in the nicest way possible. What we found was that the reason why the tanks were allowed to endure for so long without having the kinds of same standards that every other underground storage tank has is because the Department of Health gave the Navy an exemption. An exemption that wasn't authorized at any level of law. So no state statute allowed them to exempt the Navy. And so we sued them, got that exemption scratched off the books, and now the Navy has to, slow by slow, come into compliance with state law. And so we want to push them eventually to the point of where they have double-walled tanks, like there's a gas station, or they have their tanks put someplace else that is not at risk for groundwater. So this is where we are now. We are starting to prepare for the permit application from the Navy, and we want to make sure that we have the strongest possible permit that ties them down in all the different ways to make sure that they are doing everything they can. We're studying the tank's liners. We found that they are more corroded than anyone anticipated. I mean, they started off thin, it was a 1/4-inch steel tank, very, very small. And now it's like down to 1/8 of an inch in some places. Super small. And we're looking at tank upgrade alternatives. There will be public hearings, probably in the spring, maybe in the summer. And part of what we are hoping to do is get lots of people who look like you to come to the public hearings, to submit testimony, to engage in order to help the Navy make the most protective decision possible. So this is the video, and it auto magically pings. It's only 5 minutes.
Why the water is important to me is because we need to drink water. It's not really rocket science. Aside from that first necessity, I use it to farm. I'm Anthony DeLuz, and I am a Mahiad. This place is called Kapolohi. It's an ili. It is a part of a larger ahupua of Kalawao. And it's traditionally was Lo'ikalo, and we're keeping it that way. I'm trying to first and foremost restore this aina in a traditional manner as much as possible. Keep as much of the practice and the production as traditional as possible. Red Hill is an important issue to me because there's tanks that are 200 feet tall sitting on top one of our most important water resources for the island. A water source that big and important is not something that I'm willing to gamble.
While, with all due respect and the resource of fuel for our Navy and our Pacific Fleet, one of the largest underground storage facility tanks in the world, it's important that we also be cognizant of our water quality in that area.
It's very impressive to see all the steps that they are taking, both on a technical level as well as a physical level, to safeguard, the quality of the testing that they're doing. The fact that that location is so close to, a big chunk of Hawaii's water supply is really a very, very serious concern.
I feel that 22 years is too long, and that we can shorten that gap.
22 years to come up with a plan is a ridiculous proposition.
I think it's also ridiculous that we're talking about a 20-year plan to figure out where the fuel has moved.
We should take as many years as they built it, which is 4 years, and fix the problem within that time frame.
I think we should be doing immediate things right now in a huge way. We should be cleaning up right now. Why wait? Why wait 20 years to find out, if we should clean it up then? Clean it up now.
This is an urgent problem, and we need people to get involved now to help all public officials recognize the urgency in this issue.
The time to get involved is now. The time to get active is right now.
I would not be proud to be part of a generation that just kind of turned a blind eye on the most important resource the state has to offer.
I know people are very busy, and there's a lot of competing interests, and so it seems overwhelming sometimes to try to get involved in an issue so important as this. The reality is that if we don't get involved now, we're going to have a much harder problem to deal with in the future.
I totally feel you because I'm busy all day, every day, with a family of 3 kids and full-time farming. I know exactly how hard it is. But what would be harder is surviving without water.
The Sierra Club works hard to make things accessible, including testifying on legislation. You can submit testimony any hour of the day in writing, and it can be very, very simple. Petitions, learning more about the issue, talking to your neighbors. There are a lot of things that you can do to get involved and to help us build a movement for urgent action to protect the water resources. And it doesn't take a lot of time.
We have power, but if we stay silent, we're not going to get anything changed. Without water, there's no life, really. Life of life. Water is life.
So this video was made by a student who interned with the Sierra Club. She just took all the information that we had at the time, and she interviewed council members, senators that represent the Honolulu area, and she put together this informational video that's posted on our website. And that's part of where you guys come in. I heard Mr. Cooper use the term force multiplier. You students represent a force multiplier for the Sierra Club. Our advocacy can only go so far. What's most effective, honestly, I've been doing this work for 15 years, and the thing that really gets through to lawmakers, hits that special spot, is hearing from young people like you. You guys have this secret power, magic power, that when you get up and say even the simplest thing like, please protect my future drinking water, you're making decisions today that affect my future drinking water, please be most protective. That is really effective in helping them to take serious the weight of the decision before them. And so I'm hoping that you all will help us to engage. We have a petition that you can sign online, and we actually have paper copies here. If you guys want to take it around to your friends, your family, and get them to sign it, you can mail it back to us, take a picture of it, and email it to us or text it to us. Write letters to the editor, and host presentations yourself. If you have other groups, church groups, sports teams, anybody that you think cares, maybe because they drink water, to help them get involved. I will give one anecdotal tale. Before you all were born, there was an island that was bombed by the Navy as target practice, Kaho'olawe. And for years, the Navy said, we must use this island. We can't do anything else. We can never train in any other way, in any other place. We must use this island. The residents of Hawaii, they could feel the vibrations of the bombs. They could see the smoke, smell it. They could see the damage that was done to the island. And they said, no, actually, we're not okay with you bombing this island. It took them several years, but especially thanks to the work of many young people, people under 30, who advocated to the local legislators and then also eventually to the federal delegation, were able to convince the Navy to stop bombing the island, and they did. island was returned to the state of Hawaii. They're in the process of trying to restore it. It is a long haul. Their bombing broke the cap on the aquifer, so the aquifer drained. So there's no water for the trees to tap into. But people who are working on the restoration to protect Ho'olaueohana are not giving up, and they're finding new and innovative ways to store water so that they can replant with native plants. The point is that the Navy was able to find another way to meet their training needs without bombing one of our islands. And I feel like there's a strong analogy here. Right now the Navy's saying there's no other way we can store this fuel. We must store it in our most favorite way. And it's up to us to be able to help the Navy make the right decision in this case, to see that their convenience in storing fuel in this way is not worth the risk to our future drinking water. And so I implore you and beg you to please help us sign our petition and engage your friends and family. There will be hearings coming up in the spring and the summer. Legislative session starts in January, and we are hoping that all of you will help us to engage and multiply the force of our power to help us protect our water. And that's basically it. Very excited. Do you have other questions?
Take a moment, look at your notes, think about your research and questions that you might have.
And these are all the ways to track us, follow us, engage with us.
How many people need to sign the petition?
Great question. My goal is 100,000 people.
And how many have you gathered so far?
Not that many. I don't know off the top of my head how many we have, but the goal is to have 100,000. So if you are interested in taking up this issue and promise not to waste the dead trees that are used to present this information, we have a handout. We have several copies of this you can take with you, educate yourself, and pass it out to other people that you know. And we have a beautiful petition. You can take several and collect signatures, mail it back to us. You don't even have to mail it, you can just take a picture and text it to us. But it's going to take all of us doing a little bit in our own circles to be able to really mount the public education and outreach program that will be necessary to protect our groundwater. Question?
Yes, so because of this water contamination because from the Red Hill, could this possibly affect like water springs that are around here?
Right, so what was important about the taro farm that you saw in the video, that is a taro farm in between the two pieces of Crow Ridge Shopping Mall. Are you guys familiar with Crow Ridge Shopping Mall? No, you guys have never been there, right? Yes, Crow Ridge Shopping, all right. You got Sears, right? And then you've got, well, I guess, is it still Sears? Sears, anyway, and then you have the Watercress Farm, and you're driving along before you get to Anna Miller's, right? There's that Watercress Farm on the right-hand side of the road.
Conversations, but be attentive, please.
And behind the Watercress Farm is that taro farm, Anthony DeLuce's Cottonwood Taro Farm. And what's important about the taro farm, it is fed by spring water from this aquifer. And so if the aquifer gets contaminated, even if we put activated carbon filters on our water supply, or drinking water supply, the stuff that comes on the tap to pull out the fuel, all of the springs, like the one for Anthony's farm, would be contaminated. There's no way to cap all of those springs and filter that water through activated carbon to pull out fuel. So it would have, compounding cumulative negative impacts for the quality of our environment for generations to come if this groundwater is contaminated. Yes?
Why did they put the tanks in that spot?
Great question. So can you cycle back to the map in the beginning? Basically, they loved this area because it was underground. There were already caves there that they could just expand. So they felt so it was secret for a long time. Honestly, the public didn't know about these tanks being there until the early 1990s, late 1980s. And the feature they liked the most is that should the electricity go out, the fuel can be delivered down to Pearl Harbor by gravity. So you don't have to use pumps. From my perspective, the convenience of being able to deliver fuel to the Pearl Harbor with gravity is not worth the risk for water. We know in many other places where not only the Navy, but the general public pumps fuel all across long pipes, right? We talk about the tar sands in Canada pumping fuel to all corners of the North American continent. And so I don't think that the pumping of fuel is sufficient enough reason to keep these tanks located above our drinking water. But that's the reason. They like that. Yes, question there underneath.
When they were building these tanks, did they know that there was groundwater under the tanks?
Yeah, there's another picture we have of a guy in a little boat at the bottom of the hole, digging the hole from the boat. So, and doing the shot sweep from the boat. So it was very clear there was water in the bottom that they had to pump out to be able to complete the tank.
So when we talk about the cheapest options and less expensive, how long would the cheapest option last? Would it last 1 year maybe, and then they have to repair it again?
So the way the Navy's approaching this is these tanks could endure forever, indefinitely, so long as they are repaired every 5 years. So they have them on 5-year repair cycles, and their thinking is that they repair a tank, it's good for 20 years, and they go through and it takes 5 years for each group of 3 tanks, and they're good for another 20 years. I'm worried about that because the tanks are so old and so corroded that I think the risk is too high, and they're being overly optimistic that the tanks will endure for. I mean, think about it. By the time they are done with this process, the tank will be almost 100 years old. I mean, that's just what was built at the same time? The USS Missouri. The USS Missouri was built at the same time that these tanks were. It's the same age steel, and we retired that thing because even though it still floats, it costs way too much to maintain it. So many things break at one time. So I think it's a time for this to become a stop on the historic military tour. Other amazing questions. By the way, I'm going to report back to my kids that the upper school's amazing. Yeah.
So since now that the U.S. military isn't really going to war with these ships, are they just using it for training, or what are they shipping all this oil for?
So they store the fuel for national emergencies. It is used on a regular basis. Fuel ages, and so you have to constantly cycle it out. They do use it for training. You guys are maybe familiar with the RIMPAC that happens every 2 years here. Militaries from around the world, from around the Pacific, come to Hawaii and engage in training, and they use fuel from the Red Hill fuel tanks. This is used mostly for airplanes. It's jet fuel. Most of the ships that the Navy uses now are powered by nuclear energy, so they don't use this for that purpose as much anymore. Yes?
If they were to move it, where would it be moved to?
So there are a couple of locations that, so the Navy has done a relocation study. They actually had the nerve to suggest that their preferred relocation place is immediately uphill of the existing Red Hill tank. So they are proposing to put 40 tanks up here, which is still coincidentally above our drinking water. So we don't like that option. The option that we are looking at is actually a golf course that the Navy owns that's closer to Pearl Harbor. And they wouldn't get to golf there anymore. Probably not conducive to golf on the tanks, but I think we should give up the golf course to be able to store our fuel in a safer way. Other questions? Yes.
Do you know around how much it would cost to move these fuel tanks to the golf field?
Millions of dollars, billions of dollars, lots of money. But I just want to say, the United States has the largest military force the most well-funded military force. And our water is priceless, and it is worth it. If they need this fuel for strategic purposes, they need to figure out a way to store it that doesn't risk our health and safety. It's not national security if our water gets contaminated in the process. Mission fail, right? Think about it. Like if a firefighter is supposed to be protecting your house from fire and sets a fire in the back door, not helping, right? So we need them to store this fuel in a way that doesn't risk our water, and that advances their mission of providing for national security. All right, thank you very, very, oh yeah, yes, yes, yes.
How do you propose that would be the best way to store the fuel?
So the first thing I'd like to do is challenge the Navy to reduce its reliance on fossil fuel as much as possible. So they've already made the move to nuclear energy for most of its battleships. And I think the Navy of any entity has the kind of funding to be able to advance alternative fuel sources for jets, which is the primary use of this. So reduce their reliance on fossil fuels as much as possible. It's a strategic weakness for them, and it's a risk to our environment for us. And then I think relocating a smaller amount of fuel to the Gulf course area that's closer to Pearl Harbor. You would have to have backup generators to pump the fuel should the electricity go out to the airplanes. I think that's worth it. It's worth having those kind of reserves to be able to protect our groundwater. So, yes, you have an.
How long would it take to relocate all the tanks?
So the Navy is currently saying that it takes 20 years, and we think that's too long. I don't actually know the answer to that question. Honestly, the amount of time it takes to relocate the tanks is reduced the more resources you invest in relocating tanks. So if this has the kind of urgency that we feel it needs, we think that they could do it in 5 to 10 years.
Original construction took 4 years, and that was with 1940s technology, and that was digging into a hillside. The proposal is if you build it on a golf course, which is predominantly already level, and you're not going to relocate the tanks, you're going to build new facilities.
Right.
I think that's one of the other things to
State-of-the-art
think of. You're not going to dig the tanks out and move them.
Yeah.
They're being tasked with just constructing new ones. Because digging them out, taking them out, that's, but.
No, leave them there. We could do like indoor bungee jumping or something. It would be amazing. Think of all the things we could do with this huge space underground. But in terms of fuel, relocate them to modern facilities that are closer to their point of use.
20 years is absurd.
Yeah, this question, that question, and then he's got another one. So go ahead.
Okay, so what are they gonna do with the tanks once they clean all the fuel out? Because surely if they just let it stay there, it'll just corrode the water.
I mean, personally, I would like to see them remove the tanks altogether. I don't know that they would do that. That's the next decision that would need to be made. Yeah, I think you're right. Eventually, would just erode if they didn't maintain it for historical military tours. It would corrode and eventually leach into the groundwater.
So sort of adding on to what you said, so once they move all of this fuel, could they possibly, because earlier you mentioned that there were these caves that could possibly have Hawaiian artifacts and things.
We're researching that.
Yeah, so could you, if all the fuel is moved and you were able to at least dig in, could you possibly find, be able to dig into the...
I don't know, it's a great question. My concern is that a lot of the historic artifacts were removed, maybe even destroyed. I don't know.
Okay.
You had a question over there?
How much water is in the aquifer?
We don't know. We know very little about this aquifer. We know it's huge. We know the outer edges of it. We know that it's got a lot of water in it, but we don't know exactly how much, and we don't know how it's stored in there. So there's lots of different kind of holes, caverns, where the water is, accumulates and stays. There are valleys and peaks, so it's hard for us to know exactly how the water moves underground, right? So one of the things the Navy likes to say is, don't need to worry, all water flows downhill. So whatever contamination happens, it will only affect, you know, the Navy installations downhill. And I don't think it's safe to say that. We don't know where the peaks and valleys are underground, and we don't know how the water moves. We only have 14 monitoring wells, and that's not enough for us to be able to catch the fuel, or the contamination as it spreads through the aquifer. I mean, just as a point of comparison, you know, there are other places that have had fuel leaks like this, fuel constructed tanks that have leaked. So Camp Lejeune had a massive leak. They have 100 monitoring wells in place. They cannot clean up the fuel. They don't have the technology to do that. So what they've done is they just monitored the movement of the plume of fuel as it degrades in the groundwater, and they moved their drinking water well to be as far away as possible from the plume that's floating through the groundwater. So, and there was a huge lawsuit that was filed because many military dependents developed medical problems as a result of drinking the water before they knew about the plume. So it's not like the risk is not that far off. Like it's happened in other places before. So I'm gonna go to her and I'll come back.
So there's so there've been 30 leaks so far, but could have been were those statements like released by the Navy?
So we released those. We got an audit from 2010. So before the 2014 leak, there was an audit done by the Navy, and we used the Freedom of Information Act to get that document. And that document went through and showed all of the things that the Navy felt itself needed to be improved. And it documented, and it accumulated what documentation they had for leaks since the facility was constructed.
But there could also be more leaks that weren't documented.
There could be more. I
That's
mean,
what they document.
yeah. So we do know. Okay, so the Clean Water Act went into effect in 1988, and it regulated the Red Hill facility, amongst other things. And so in the process of coming to compliance with the Federal Clean Water Act, the Navy went through and did boring samples under each of the tanks, and they found fuel under each of the tanks. All of the tanks have leaked at some point. And so by the time they were completed with that study in 2002, they submitted a notice of release to the Department of Health in 2002. It says, I don't know, some amount of fuel released sometime from all of our fuel tanks, and sorry, are back. And that was it. So we know that there's been quite a bit of fuel slowly released from these tanks, and that's probably the reason why we have those contamination levels showing up in the monitoring wells downhill. So, all right, in the light blue and then in the red.
What would happen if one of them caught fire? Would just everything explode?
Yeah, that's one of the concerns. So one of the things that they installed as a result of the 2010 audit were just like submarine doors. You know, those doors like seal, and they have, you see in the old movies, right? We're like, quick, the water's coming in, and they do like this, right, and seal the door, right? They put a bunch of them. So the idea is supposed to be they are sectioned out throughout the facility. So if a fire breaks out, poor souls who are in that section, they suffer, but they close the doors and prevent the fire from spreading to the rest of the facility.
Would it just catch on fire, or would it actually explode?
I don't know. They're worried mostly about fire. I mean, so I actually went to visit the tanks, and one of the things that struck me when I first walked in the facility, right, you walk into this like long tunnel cave, you're going deep into this mountain, and the smell of fuel, right? It's like a gas station where you can smell the fuel. It was so pronounced. It was surprising to me. I had expected that it would be more like contained and sealed in, but it's not. I mean, the walls are weeping, right? And we don't know if it's water or what, but there's everything is very sort of damp in there, and the smell of fuel is quite profound. Go ahead.
Do you think fuel tanks had anything to do with Pearl Harbor? Because Pearl Harbor is 1941.
Yeah, right. So it was in response to the 1941 attack. The U.S. decided, okay, yeah, maybe we should get involved in World War II. So they ramped up their military machine, and one of the things that they did was they built this massive fuel storage facility. As part of the war.
Do you think that's why it only took 4 years to, because of that urgency of we're in war?
before, so it's just sort of the nature of the world we live in. I don't want to make too much light of it, but they built those tanks very quickly, and several people died in the process. People fell to their death. People were harmed, drowned. It was awful. So, but your point is taken that when they felt this sense of urgency, they could get it done quickly. So, all right, I had a hand over here first. Hang on. Yeah, go ahead.
So why wouldn't they try and repair it faster, at least for the safety of their sailors?
Great question. Have to ask the Navy, which is something I encourage you all to do. Do not be afraid to contact the Navy themselves. They have a person whose sole function is to communicate with the public. And if you guys are interested in this issue and you want to learn more, take these questions to the Navy and ask them. You had a question?
Yeah. Do you know how much money it costs to make the original tank?
No, but that's knowable. But I don't know off the top of my head, sorry.
So if the aquifer is like
Yeah.
there should be an air
Yeah,
like
there is.
going over the
Yeah.
Would they use some of the drone in it to like map out the entire aquifer?
Well, so no, it's not. Again, it's not that easy. So I would encourage you guys to do the public tour of the Halava Shaft at the Board of Water Supply. They host public tours. It's very cool. You get into this 1950s elevator seat thing, and you ride down into. Then you get to go and you can actually see. They take you all the way down to where you can see the aquifer, and you can see the water in there. So like the cave cavern. I guess it may be theoretically possible, but it's much more complicated than just like one big cavern. Like, have you been in, a cave or spelunking? Thanks to somebody. But so it's small crawl spaces open into huge rooms. Some of them are not connected by a thing that we can see. It's much more complicated than just trying to go through and map one room. Was there one over here? Okay, go ahead.
How far apart are they?
They're fairly close. I feel like I should know that answer, but it's not coming to the top of my head. Like, it's walkable.
If one exploded though, then could it just explode all the rest?
Yeah, I think, you're onto something. I think you should totally chase that thread all the way to the end. If it explodes, we are in deep trouble. Yeah. Other question? Going once? Going twice? All right. I encourage you all to please stay engaged. Contact us. You saw our contact information on the last slide.